can remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about the shooting at the Kaiser Hospital, where my father and I used to work. This video is important. I apologize that I had to rush through the last video, and I'm targeted. Even the word target is a play on words for tar, and the second word, get. It has to do with being blacklisted and black magic, as voodoo and a lot of this black magic stuff comes from Africa, especially West Africa, juju, right? And this is connected to this case because the shooting was done as a result of a cult ritual. And there are various people involved in these rituals, and they are government personnel, and they're connected to the governing class. And I have a lot of evidence to this effect. You see, it has to do with magic spells, right? The spelling, how things are spelled. For example, satanic ritual abuse, SRA, is RAS scrambled. Raise, who's raising who and why, and Ra's. And Ra has to do with Egypt, right? The Egyptian deity that represented God, right? The sun symbolizing God and the falcon symbolizing God. Now, I have many videos on this stuff here, and I'm the target of the operation. It has to do with the word sorcery, sorcery, E-R-I-S, right? That's what it's referring to. I know the word sorcery is spelled differently than that, and it has to do with Haroeri, who is also known as Harware, who's the Skywalker in Egypt. To make a long story short, and you should see that I'm right very soon here, all magic is like a response to the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. Before you doubt that, think about Egypt, right? Egypt was in Africa, and there were African martial artists, and they were revered more than scientists. They were revered more than artists and builders. Okay, the early followers of the Egyptian deities were martial artists. Sekhmet, martial art deity. Horus, Set, Bastet, the stick-fighting priests of Osiris, and so on and so forth. And clearly Ra, his original priests, were based on martial artists at least, and almost certainly martial artists. And Horus was the archetype of Pharaoh. Set is a deity of envy and jealousy, and witchcraft has a lot to do with jealousy. Think about voodoo, right, where they, in popular culture, they twist the doll because they're jealous of somebody. So these events have to do with the governing class lashing out. And there's connections with the Greek societies, right? Greco-Roman societies. The Greek deities like Hecate and Hebe were all witchcraft deities, right? In fact, Pan, his name is all for all the Greco-Roman deities, and many of them were directly referring to witchcraft, right? Circe, Hebe, Hecate, what have you. And so I don't want to give you a lot of background on this, what my videos are about. I'm going to kind of zoom in on this case here. I brought up in the other video that the Coronado is connected to the coronavirus, going back to magic spells. And before I realized that one of the streets that they brought up was Connell, I talked about how the consequences are connected to the con, people being condescending, okay, and false conceptions of consent, which has to do with your consciousness. So, to make a long story short, there's strong connections between that hospital and me having a girlfriend at the time. I don't have a girlfriend now. It's been 8 years since I had a date. And that's connected, right? Late, rate, fate, date, hate, right? The 7 seals. The word seal is a play on words for Eid, last. And last is connected to last. Last days, and being in a daze, a magic spell, a dizzy spell, these things are connected. Now, a lot of you who are maybe in the FBI, maybe you're Freemasons in the police department, you know for sure, beyond a reasonable doubt, that I'm right about these things. That's why there's a code of silence. Rhyme and reason, silence and violence. Violence and violating people. And there's more than one way to violate people. It has to do with consciousness, levels of consciousness, the unconscious mind, the subconscious, and consent. Right? How conscious are they? And even in the Bible, you have the prostitute who's drunk off the blood of the saints. So when we look at the fact that the suspect was a male and his victim was a female, as far as the press has told us so far, and the suspect died, is very much connected to what's going on here. Even Kaiser, early on in my videos I brought up that the Kaiser symbol at the time was actually a symbol of witchcraft. It was like three people next to a rising sun, which goes back to the solar deities. But it also is a sort of a kind of witchcraft process where they're trying to superimpose the witch's kettle on the sun. And the word manipulate has the word man in it. And the word men and mend. Solution, the soul you shun. The soul is a word for the sun, right? Which connects to the heart in Egyptian mythology. And the Lord weighs the heart, the solar deities. The Egyptian side, the heart was the seat of intelligence, heart and he-art and martial arts. Okay, God is love. So witchcraft and the craft, and the snake being crafty in the garden. It's all connected. So I don't want to kind of confuse you too much, right? I'm trying to help you understand. I said it's a deed of confusion. I'm not. The true form of Horus is this true form of Jesus as well. They're both referring to the Son of God, where the Son is symbolizing God, like in Psalm 19 and in Malachi. And in Revelation, the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. Another way to interpret that is I am both the heir, I'm both the source of David's power and the heir to his throne. So it's this generational anointment, right? Christos, meaning the anointed one. And so there was a bunch of jealous craftsmen and witches, what have you. They were jealous of Pharaoh, the top martial artist. The reason why kings wear a sword, the word spirit, to spear it, right? The sword of scripture. The word and the sword in the jaw, drawing the sword, and the spirit in which is given, the spirit in which is received. So as we look at the case, it has a lot to do with facts, factual events that happened in my life. It has to do with, it has a lot to do with a lot of things that some of them are very personal, and that's part of what they do, right? They kind of connect these things, right? Psychological operations come from Psyche, who was a Greek deity, and Ops. And Mars, who was the Roman deity of martial arts, where we get the word martial arts. Martial arts ultimately come from Africa, but the Romans, the West used the word martial from the word Rome's, from Mars, whose name is Ram scrambled, and his Greek counterpart is Ares, which is like the word Eri. But Eri, E-R-I-S, in Greco-Roman mythology is a deity of discord. It goes back to the Tower of Babel and confusing the language and what's being referred to, okay, and that is first and foremost in matters of religion, mythology, the occult, in matters of spiritual ideas, right? And again, the word spirit is a play on which to spear it and spar it. Spirit, spar, and par. The word spar is like star, rhyme and reason. Spar and soar, right? Divine and diving. The word win and wind. Okay, the word hits is scrambled in the word Christ. In Isaiah, we see that righteousness and faithfulness are the belt and sash. Putting on the armor of God, there's a lot of connections here. And when you think about it, the miracles are figurative. Right? The Last Supper with the bread and the wine. And the wine stands for the blood that was shed. Okay, so you have the word Horus, right? Whore us and wine, like whining and complaining. And so they're shunning me, right? I brought up that shun has the word sun scrambled, also the word hun, right? Like honey. What people say, they say my honey and so on and so forth. So in order to understand why that shooting took place, we have to have this sort of background. I'm going to make a part 2 soon. I have a lot to do right now. The video I made before this was made in my room, and when I closed the windows because they were mowing the lawn outside, it kind of creates some kind of electromagnetic field because they're persecuting me with fumes and poison. The word fume is a play word for F-U-M-E. Poison is the word position as the word poison it. It's a play on words for poison it, right? It's poison is scrambled. And place and lace. It's not a coincidence. Okay, covert operations, covert drugging, covert poisoning, covert fuming. Witches in the witch's kettle and the fumes coming from the witch's kettle. I can go on and on about the connections here. Okay, the word king is in the word smoking, right? So they're smoking putting smoke in the air. Okay, risking, rise king. Thinking, right? Thin king. Talking about, what are we talking about in the first place? Tall king, alpha, bout. That's what we're talking about in the first place when we're talking about magic spells and the occult. So what are we talking about when we're talking about these covert killings? We're talking about, the King of Kings, the false image of Christ. We're talking about, King Charles is a false idol. Harry, William, right? They're tall kings. We're also talking about short Jews who are jealous of tall kings. And I'm not a racist, but that's a part of it. And when it comes to martial arts, a lot of Asians are shorter. When they get taller, they're not as coordinated as black people. And it goes back to the soul brother, S-O-U-L, right? The soul brother, the sun brother, the people of the sun. Now, I'm not a black supremacist. I'm mulatto. And even if I was the darkest black person ever lived, I wouldn't be a black supremacist, because that's cult of the flesh. And the word selfish is a play on words for see flesh. So it's the spirit, right? The spirit of universal pinpoint and moral precision versus people who are selfish in various ways. Be it racism, be it putting food and shelter over righteousness, be it lust. The word lust has the word slut scrambled into it, right? Together, two get her. There's a lot of connections here. And when we look at it, it points to a formula, right? The formulae, the formula, wordplay, ward, to ward something away, draw, word ward is draw, scramble, and play, play. And a melee, right? Melee, grapple, has the word rape scrambled in, and so on and so forth. There are so many connections, right? A reproductive cycle, the ring of a martial art event, right? Sport with the T. The T is the feminine suffix. I can go on and on about this, but let me just end it here, and we'll get into more of the details of the case in part 2. I'd first make that strong. Well, this is part 2, but it's probably best to start from here than the other video, because the other video is very confusing. I rushed it, but in the next video, one way or another, we'll get into more of the details of this case here. But first, we had to have a solid background. Okay, what is going on here and why? I can't just say, hey, it's some kind of occult event. People play stupid about that, even though there's a lot of occultists everywhere these days. I had to first make sure that you understand that it was a cult event that involves the state, the CIA, what have you, right? The CIA, FBI is fib scrambled. CIA is CI alpha. I mean, who you think of as the alpha, right? Mind control, government, meaning mind is in the word mental. Establishment, okay, law enforcement, right? ICE, right? Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, right? Justice, just ICE. A green card, green the color of fertility. I can go on and on about the connections here. But I think that, I'm going to end it here for now.